December 12th of 2018. Are there any questions or comments? None. If none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th, 2018?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? And the next are the minutes of the 19th, December 19th of 2018. Does anybody have any questions or comments on those minutes? None. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
So, I love these kinds of meetings because I just get to go take it away. So the next item on the agenda is to talk about...
James.
Sorry, we didn't vote on that one.
Oh, all those in favor? Thanks.
There we go.
Is general update. So.
Whoever slide the thumbs up first. That's the way this is.
Yeah. So if you guys, we have a couple handouts for you tonight. You go to the handout that has the bar graph and the Excel sheet on the back of it. PMA has been in contact with Perkins Eastman and has kind of gone through a couple different options, variations that we have found. One variation that we found was on option DW3. PMA came to the realization that how that construction would need to happen would either need to be a phased project for a new construction. We build part of the new construction, move kids into that. So that is the option. That's a new construction for a consolidated school on the center site. And we realized that that project would most likely need to go under a CM procurement, which carries about an 8% premium for cost. And on that size project, you're talking quite a bit of money. What we came up with was to carry about 18 modular classrooms, or about $2 million worth of modular classrooms, and keep the CM premium off and keep it as a general contracting job. So that option now includes modular classrooms in order to satisfy that transition period, to be able to take the kids off the site, demo the school, build new, and bring them back after. So that was one of the changes that we made. Another adjustment that we made was on the, we've been in contact with the MSBA on a couple other projects. I know Perkins Eastman has as well. And one of the recent projects that just received their PDP comments back, they were noted as to being questioned as to why they didn't study a specific option. Happens to be that it's a very similar option to what you guys have, so we kind of showed that option. So what we added was option C3, which was a new construction option for the center school population only at the Parkview site. So basically it sits behind the Parkview. We know it's not most likely not a preferred option. We know it comes with a lot of challenges. It comes with parking issues. It comes with parking mitigation issues, the leaching field issues. It comes with everything. Yep. Loss of fields that would need to be discussed. And then on top of that, it also adds to the inequity of doing one school and not taking care of the other two schools. But we do see these comments from the MSBA, and it's easy for us to, when we see them, get them into the project so that we don't have a comment come back in ours. So we do have that option on here, and that can be discussed tonight, and it can be narrowed down and for the reasons why that it might not be an option to move forward with as a viable option. So that is being carried as a cost now. So you'll see that is the third bar in from the left with the question mark on top. What we did, based on the discussion from the last meeting, was to put the question marks above the three options that we felt were being discussed by the committee last meeting. And I think that's kind of the update we have on cost at this point. And go ahead.
Can I just ask a logistical question about
Yep.
the DW3?
Yep.
So when you're saying to demo and then portable classrooms,
Modular,
thank you.
off-site,
Offsite meaning.
maybe at the Parkview site,
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
probably at the Parkview site.
Got it. Okay.
We were weighing some of the CM premium, we were looking at $7-8 million.
Yeah.
Modular classrooms, $2 million, so just weighing the two costs.
Yeah.
Much easier to have projects on a nice clean site without risk of interaction between workers and students. Not a clean site, but a non-occupied site, right?
Right.
And that's what shows up on the spreadsheet is swing space cost, right?
Exactly, yeah. So that's the change in DW3, that's the change in
Got it.
approach.
Okay. Is there any, probably not yet, but is there any traffic considerations for having what would be a short-term two-school population within that one school site?
Yep, there definitely is in there. Unfortunately, if we were to construct on that site, traffic mitigation for the Parkview site is something that would be totally outside of the scope
Right.
of the MSBA, so
Probably-
definitely another challenge, but
Maybe not even allowed to be included in the project with it being off-site.
right. Based on feedback we received from the last meeting, it didn't seem like it was a desirable option. We just wanted to make sure
Sure.
that the number was really
Due
dialed
diligence,
into what we would have it at if we were to move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is just explain a little bit this new option C3 that PMA has, Walter has already described a bit, but the premise here would be to build just the center school on the Parkview site. So you really have two schools co-located, and as Walter said, I don't think this was an option that came from the district, but it's more turning over every stone and making sure that we've covered all the bases. So what you'll see here, if I march through some of the highlights on C3, you'll see very different targets for play space, for parking, and for car queues, and that's basically because it's 2/3 of the student enrollment, and so roughly 2/3 of the parking or play or any of those requirements. So that's, in case anybody's wondering, that's why the targets are a little bit different. So what we do find is if you were to co-locate the school, the new center school on the Parkview site, that it would meet the target play space. You would definitely lose 2 softball fields. It's possible there might be some road work configuration to try to restore one. But you would definitely need to at least plan for replication on an off-site for at least one of them. We know that this site has some advantages in that it's near central location, it's near police and fire. We know that we can also utilize the existing septic plant, but we need additional leaching field. As far as traffic goes, it looks like it would meet the requirements for both schools on the same site. In fact, again, just to give due diligence here, what we probably suggest is a shared bus loop that would provide access to both schools, and then separate car drop-off for Parkview and separate car drop-off for the new center school. So you'd still have separation of cars and buses. You would just have the buses coming in to bring kids to both of the schools coming in the central location. So that's probably the most efficient way to model the circulation. Educationally, building the new center school would meet all the educational objectives of the center school. But what it doesn't do, as with any single center school project, is provide equity. It would be inequity until the Parkview School is renovated or rebuilt, as well as Moreau Hall. And that, we estimate, could be a range, but we think we're talking 12+ years to complete the picture. Construction would be what we would consider minimal impact. It would take probably about 1.5 years to build. The inconvenience would be the loss of fields, but the new construction would occur with relatively minimal disruption to the existing school. And we've got the preliminary costs on this, which would be about $38 million construction costs, $47 million total project budget, and district share about $34. So it's very similar to option C2. And of course, off-site demo fields are added costs. The interesting thing about this one, though, that I think might pique some interest is if the will of the town was to not build the large school now, you could potentially design this school so that it was the first phase, if you will, of what could become the future consolidated plan. So it does represent maybe an option for a long-term plan, doing a small bit now and a long-term plan, which again, still costs more money because you're delaying construction out to the future and addressing the other two schools. But I think that was worth pointing out. Any questions on this option? It's added to the mix. I think next up we were going to continue the dialogue, or depending on what people have been able to review in the off time, just open it up for discussion on the options and ultimately seek a vote of recommendations for the MSBA.
Can I just, so we're gonna come back to the historical commission stuff and the cash flow. That was on the agenda.
You can give you a quick
No,
update.
no, just, I wanted in terms, so we don't forget it. We'll do it at the end.
Sure.
So I think we had said last time, and we didn't vote on it, because we didn't have a vote on the agenda, but the two that I think we felt strongly about were obviously, in terms of presenting to the MSBA, but then not moving forward, was the center school sites, the district-wide large buildings at center school, because of the obvious drawbacks that those presented. So that's kind of, that was the conversation that we were having at our last meeting.
Yeah, and just to reiterate some of the points, basically, that was DW1 and DW3, that's the district-wide on the center school site. Neither one of them meet the place-based targets. And I think in both of these, we worked to try to meet certainly the bus queue and majority of parking. DW3 does not meet the parking count, and neither one of them come close to meeting the car queue. So it's anticipated that there would be major traffic impact.
So I don't know if people feel like we need to have that conversation again or validate that conversation, or if we are just ready to vote not to move those two forward into the kind of assessment period.
How many should we propose?
So the MSBA requires the base repairs to move forward,
Right.
either an addition renovation or a full renovation and a new at both sites and both enrollments. So you would have the base repairs, an ad reno, and a new at the small enrollment at both sites.
Which number?
So I would
C1,
say,
C3.
see the two bands there, left and right side, center school and then district-wide?
Yeah,
Two from each side
Right.
would satisfy.
Two from each.
right.
Yep.
And so, which means that we could eliminate the two that we had talked about last time and still be
And
okay.
you could still, and you could eliminate the option that we are presenting,
Right, the new
that
one.
we just presented, that may not fit the town.
And we have to have a reno and a new one each
Right.
side of that. in each
And
one.
just as a reminder, we present all of these in the PDP, but at the end of this process, we say, as we move into the January to May timeframe, the only ones that we're going to explore in more depth are all the ones except the ones we eliminated.
Jane, what were the two that were not favorable at the last meeting?
Because the two.
No, sorry, which,
Yeah, DW1 and DW3, because those were the large schools on the center school site.
right,
And there were lots of drawbacks to that scenario.
thank you.
So we effectively need to eliminate one.
From this side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two from that
And
side.
then we have our four.
Then we have those.
So Jane, are you looking for a motion to remove those two first and just get that started, or are you looking for one motion at the end with everything?
I think one motion at the end with everything will work. And so, I'm just putting this up there. Do we actually have to absolutely eliminate one? Right.
What it does is, by narrowing of the options, it's going to allow Perkins Eastman to further develop and refine the options that we do move forward in more depth, because they won't have so many options to move forward.
The MSBA will want to see that some progress is made because they want to see that we were ready to submit the PDP and we didn't need more time to evaluate the option. So it is good to really narrow down at this point. If there's some that just flat out don't make sense.
So,
I mean, I'll kick it off. Why not? I think the new option, bearing the inequality and whatever sort of additional costs are associated with the potential traffic impact of C3, I think that's still a more feasible option than C1, to be fair. Like, I think the ad reno option, other than we're submitting base repairs for the obvious reason that we have to. The ad reno option of C1, just there's still that huge sort of 12-year gap of the other two populations that were, back in the Q4, and it doesn't hit sort of that true goal we're aiming for. And if we can eliminate that, have a new at Center, new at Parkview, and then every the what is it, D2, DW2, and DW4 on the other side, that sort of covers all the bases. Right?
Do we have to have an ad rental for Center?
Yeah.
We do. We need a reno on each enrollment.
Oh, you do have to have an ad rental. I thought that was basically
So we need
called it.
C1.
yeah.
So we have to have C1.
So basically between C2 and C3.
Right.
On C2, how much will that displace students in construction of that?
C2 doesn't displace students.
Build new right behind.
Okay, I didn't know if there was enough room or if it would
No, it's right,
affect.
they're down
Construction
there.
back, yeah.
Alright, so same thing with C3.
My, I don't know, and I know this has just been introduced today, but I feel like the C3 just doesn't seem like a smart option to pursue, because you still have, for the remainder of the life, you still have the inequities. Because you have a brand new school on the Parkview site and an old school on the Parkview site. And I almost wonder if that, from a perception perspective, because they're right next to each other, if that might almost feel worse than if at least they're in three different.
Right.
I
The
don't
optics
know.
of that.
And the benefit to having three separate schools is for having neighborhood schools at that age level. And that completely takes that benefit away, even though it's not listed in green on the charts.
It will be when I submit it, because whatever the comments
Yeah.
come out tonight, I'll be able to.
Yeah, I was saying that more for,
Yep.
everybody
The other
else, so.
issue is I've been hearing very clearly that we're concerned about traffic, and I just want to make sure that what you said was because this is a new center, did you say that traffic isn't considered with this project? A new center at Parkview?
So that was on the DW3 option, if we put mods at Parkview.
Okay, so
Yeah.
C3, we would have a traffic study involved with that?
we would.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm very concerned about losing the two softball fields. I think that it's really important to have those on our campus. So,
I also think that if you're looking at C3 versus DW2, like effectively you lose one softball field, so one field with two, you get significantly more students and essentially the same construction site, right? I understand from a due diligence standpoint this is there, but if you're comparing apples to apples,
One of the benefits of C3 though is that the ability to add on additional schools in the future, right? I mean,
Same thing with C2, right?
but what happens when you need to add on those additional schools to the existing population? Is that another modular cost at that point to kick them out
Well,
of that site?
with C2, you do have the issue of the tight site. You kind of start, once you add one school, you're going to start getting towards that DW3 and filling up that site and losing the play space and losing the parking. Whereas at the C3 option, you do have
Right.
a little bit more space to move around.
Yeah, I initially when I presented it, I floated the idea that it could be the first leg of ultimately completing the consolidated plan, but that remains to be seen.
Right. If
It's
we
not
get
every
ability.
proven out.
Sorry.
The reality is doing one version of the school now may in fact prove to be a monster hurdle because part of what you've built, cafeteria for example, or media center, isn't the right size, so you've got to start to tear down walls.
Right, fair enough.
You don't have to, of all the configurations, you have to have one for each configuration, for ad reno, for new, do you have to have one on each site?
No, you have to, one of each, not necessarily, one of each enrollment is
Okay.
what they're gonna.
Doesn't matter.
They require that we study them on each site, but we
Right.
satisfied that here.
Okay,
We should be okay. But
so if we got rid of new at center, there would be no options at center, that would be okay.
You have the ad reno in the center and the,
The ad reno.
Well, there's
Just the ad reno.
Yep.
Okay.
for the smaller enrollment.
Right.
this one too.
I don't like the loss of the softball fields either. I think that's big in the community. But I looked at, on the left-hand side of the bar chart, I looked at adding the renovation cost of, Parkview and Moreau on top of what you have. And, C1 we have to look at, which is really expensive when you add them together. But if you're looking at the other two options, C2, you're looking at a $105 million investment between a new school and renovating the other two. And if you're looking at C3, it's $107 million. And that's in today's dollars, and doesn't tell you any of those two qualify for anything. They're close, but I think the higher cost plus the loss of the fields, I'd have to say that C2 would be the only one that you might want to look at for that option.
Sir, one other question about the ad reno thing. So is the ad reno, so DW1 essentially, that would count as an ad reno at center, but we need one for each population for ad reno? That's what my
Yep, based on recent feedback.
Got it.
That's something, their guidelines aren't really super clear on this, the dual enrollment thing as well as the new with the MSBA.
Sure.
So C1 and DW1 have to go forward.
No,
I would
C1
recommend
and DW2
carry
Yes,
have
they
to go
do.
forward.
DW
Yep.
one?
I'm sorry, DW2.
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 Yes.
Yeah.
They-
One
because they're
one
on
of
one of the
DW1
four
or DW2.
So
populations.
C1 and DW2 have to go forward. And
If you could flip DW1 or DW2, yes, you got it.
So, I mean, here's a hypothetical, I'm just throwing it out there, is could we say, when we go into the MSBA right now, that here's all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus the base repairs. We know right now that we're ready to eliminate 2 of them, the 2 big ones at center school. We're not sure about eliminating the C3. And then could we eliminate it fairly, if we feel like that's the one not to move forward with, that still gives us some time as we enter into the next phase, and if we feel like we need more information to make that decision, we could then decide which one of the ones that we've had left do we not want to explore in detail. Am I making sense?
yeah,
yeah.
propose 5 instead of 4. And then when they come back and say, you gotta narrow it down first.
We have an extra one to kill.
Right.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
agree.
and it may be that we need to talk about, this is
Right.
brand new, we've just seen this for the first
Yes.
time today. I don't know how much work you have had a chance to do on it, but it's feeling like, my gut says no,
Right.
but.
How much of a delay will that incur on behalf of Perkman, Eastman?
Yeah. What's the
Um,
marginal
Yeah,
benefit?
if,
Delay?
because
It's not a
it,
delay.
what's the cost benefit? That's none? Okay.
It's not a delay, it just means that as we go into the next phase, usually we'll start to try to
Right.
go into a bit more detail, unearth a few more things. So, this one may be a good use of energy to just understand, can it be truly the first leg of a phase project, or maybe
Sure.
it doesn't. And maybe the more people think about the cons, they're not going to change. We may just get an updated list. That what we've just heard tonight, maybe after people get more time to think about it, may come on quickly.
I guess my question is just, with the exception, there hasn't been much positive reaction by anyone
Yeah.
here towards C3, so.
I
And if we
think
need to
it's
show
more
progress.
expensive, the traffic's
Yeah, it's-
worse,
it's-
and we lose 2 softball fields.
I agree.
And you're maintaining.
Well, the community
Two
impact is
schools.
overwhelmingly
Yes.
negative. You're you are negatively impacting the greater community with the loss of the softball fields to benefit a small population of our students. It's not, we're not benefiting district-wide.
Biggest thing.
Yeah, 235 students, and yet the high school is going to be impacted, and the middle school, and the rec department. So for me, it's a no-brainer to let it go at this point, and I would rather use our resources just more effectively when we know, or at least I know, and you seem to agree, that this is not a feasible plan.
I just wasn't sure if people
Yeah.
were.
Well, I'll put it up there.
From
Put it up.
from an inequality question too.
Well said.
If there's two distinct schools on one site,
Yes.
That's terrible.
That's what I was saying.
does that all of a
initially.
sudden become as a parent being like, excuse me,
Absolutely.
why did I
Yes.
get put into this
And
one?
one is new
Yeah.
and one is not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
I just
also
think
coupled
that's-
with.
That's a fun fight to have 60 times a day.
Well, and that's also coupled
Yeah,
with.
the inequity
Oh, hello,
becomes
who? Okay,
visible
great.
every day.
Right.
I mean, it's in your face. I mean, you're reminded of it 8 hours a day. That
You're also combining two school populations from a traffic perspective, which from
voodoo
a
doll
perception,
sales
you're
Without
combining
any benefit.
without any
Right.
benefit.
So it sounds like we're ready to take that one off.
Basically.
So that would sound great. Let's do that one.
Combining two rather than.
I am comfortable going forward with C3 being eliminated.
So are we then saying C3 is eliminated, and what are the other two?
DW1 and
DW3,
DW3.
DW1, Yep.
Because if you then, to that point, if you come back and they still need to show the next round of progress, we still have C2, which
It's not very
is
feasible.
not the greatest option, small population, difficult. And we can always say, all right, we're narrowing it down to add reno, new.
Because the fact is, we have to narrow this down. We can't live indefinitely with 5 or 4 options.
No, that's
We're going to have to
start
narrow it down to
happen
1, yeah.
Immediately in the
Strip the
next
Band-Aid
phase,
off.
I imagine. Because by the time we're at the end of the next phase,
Yeah.
we've got our one choice.
I mean, let's be fair, we have.
So it looks like we need to keep CW1
Yep,
and CW2,
yep.
or C2. And we've agreed to take off the C3.
Yep.
We agreed to take off DW1.
Yep.
We need to keep DW2.
Yep.
We're going to take off DW3.
Yep.
And we need DW4.
Sure do.
Can I make that a
So,
motion?
can I have, you just
So
took the
moved.
words right out of my mouth. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
First and a second?
Second.
all those in favor?
All those in favor?
She was making notes.
How many committee chairs do we have?
I know.
From other boards.
1, 2, 3.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
share.
One, two.
I'm happy to share.
Supposed to.
She's just excited to vote.
Okay.
One other update, another update that I probably should have rolled into the options. It's very small, but everyone got another space summary, yay. And Monica will go ahead. Circled on there is the fact that there was basically an error. There was 200 square feet more than intended with the center school only configuration in the media center. So it was intended to be 2,020 square feet. Your last iteration of this would have had 2,220. So that's been corrected. The intent was to match the MSBA guidelines. It's a small thing, just to hang on to for your records if you're all keeping them.
Wait, so
Under the proposed.
that, we're still at the guideline.
Under that category, we're matching the MSBA's guideline for
Got it.
media center, yes?
Got it, okay.
Okay, so I don't know what you're ready to do next, but what I have on the agenda is, so the item, do you guys have a copy of the agenda? Did you get a copy? You have a copy, right?
Electronically.
Okay. So we have presentation and discussion of the PDP.
We can talk about that now. So I believe Monday, I sent out a link to the draft PDP submission that has been compiled. I know it's 600 pages.
Yeah.
I hope everyone saw the bookmark tab because it's a little easier to scroll through using that. But that's been ongoing. That's everything, all the work that's happened to date. What's also going to go in there is the meeting minutes that were just voted on. The meeting minutes from tonight will also need to be certified. So I'll have to get with Jane at either tomorrow or Monday before the submission goes in to certify the minutes. And that's just a record of what
Just
was
neat, yeah.
accounted for. Yep. And then one of the last things that PMA will be putting together is the discussion that just happened on the options, and a little bit of a cost narrative based on the presentation of the costs. And I'll turn it over to Dan and Bob to kind of discuss the other portions of the PDP that have been ongoing.
Sure, we certainly didn't intend to do a page turn. This is a
But we brought it.
physical copy of what's happening, and as you've heard tonight, we'll be supplementing even the evaluation of options. We'll be supplementing with what we heard tonight. But basically, it's not new information. So, you know, there's a chapter on introduction, which includes a number of things like the,
Efficiencies, invitation to feasibility.
It's also a test.
But it's really just an overview, including the project schedule, the budget. The educational program, the committee has had a chance to look at. That's been approved by the school committee as well, along with the space summary. And you just heard tonight there was a very minor edit to that. But in addition to what you see here is the spreadsheet, there's a narrative that goes along with it. So what we really do is just describe to the MSBA through each section whether we are or are not meeting their guidelines, and if not, why. So it's basically been part of our discussions in the ELT group, but again, not new information. The existing conditions as well, that was one of the first things we started with on the project, and Dan has presented a few times our findings from looking at the existing schools. That also culminates in, you know, the base repair and what it takes to fix them and what the costs associated. The site development section really describes everything that's included or required for the site, including things during the regulatory process, but also what are the intent for parking and other space needs for the site. And then the options evaluation, which we really just focused on a bit tonight. It was the development of all the options over a number of successive meetings, determining what the pros and cons are, what the, you know, comparing them against the vision and the goals that we established early on. So that entire section is devoted to that. And then we've got the action and approvals, which are a number of documents that have been collected, including a summary of all the meetings that have occurred. And finally, in the appendices, there are a long list of basic things, whether they're certification letters, the initial statement of interest that the district put into the MSBA, the design enrollment that was established with the MSBA, capital budget report, project directory schedule, the actual programming calculations that I've gone through, as well as the space summary form. We'll include all the documents on educational visioning, so the number of workshops and forums that were helped shape the goals for the project, property data cards, base repair drawings that Dan had developed, so there's a lot of detail that you'll find in the appendix, as well as the phase 1, the environmental assessment, hazardous materials, geotechnical information about the sites, our site analysis plans that were developed by our landscape architect. There'll also be large versions of each planning option in the appendix, and then the approval letter for the design program, and again, all of the meeting minutes that have occurred here at the ELP, at faculty, and at the community groups. So it's really a record of everything that
Everything's
we've all
happened.
been through. Nothing too much new.
There's really nothing new. That's exactly what it is. They're asking us to take everything we've all done and put it into one binder and hand it back to them. Really, if you wanted to, you could get most everything you needed out of the first 6 sections, first kind of write out the first 50, 60 pages, where we kind of tried to summarize everything and write it up. And those are some things that you don't have yet, because we actually, what we do is when we're putting it together, we're writing them as we're assembling.
My only was, as I was skimming through this, and I mentioned it to Misha when I was skimming through it, when you read the evaluation of the existing conditions, you know, we've seen all the highlights as you've walked us through it, but when you actually read the narrative, the number of times that you see the words obsolete or past their useful life was a little shocking. in terms of all of our systems in the current environment. It was, as I was reading it, it was a little bit scary.
The only other update, Dave, I got the update from the MSBA for the
Yep,
um,
for the roster.
for the school planning committee roster. So I'll update that, include the letter.
And you got the
another one
deed?
today.
I think I sent you the deed. I think
Yep.
that has.
Yeah, we got the deeds, so
Those in there already.
Yep, they'll ask us for those tonight.
And I think Wendy was gonna provide you with the capital. plan.
Yep, she's supposed to have that by the end of the week for the capital projects, and that goes right into the capital narrative.
And is
capital
that,
budget.
that's just for the current year, right? The capital projects for the current year?
It is ongoing projects
Oh, so it's
that,
the whole list.
It'll look back 3 years and then
Okay.
there's a look forward to, but it's the district school operating budget essentially.
ongoing projects.
Oh, the narrative, yes, yep, I was looking at any other municipal projects. There's a police station, fire station, another school, anything like that.
So that's
Any
it.
other questions, comments, things that people wonder about as we get ready to submit? If not, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the PDP for submission to the MSBA.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Was I fast enough that time?
Nice job.
So, go ahead.
Want to jump back to those two things?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give a quick update on Mass Historic Entities.
And that was just something I think you had given to Lynn to put on the agenda. So-
Yeah, and that was just because, yep.
Yeah, we're required as part of the process to submit the site and I have to kind of guess what the intentions are because they ask if you're going to demolish the building, if you're going to renovate the building. So I usually say we're going to demolish the building and see what reaction I get. The Mass Historic Commission, and they wrote back and said that neither of the buildings, because I submitted both now because I figured, just to be safe. The letters are in the PDP, I think they're actually in the copies you have, and they basically said neither building holds any historic significance, and that we go ahead and do whatever we want.
Does that have to go by our local historic commission? They're not over 75 years old, are they?
No,
No.
neither of them.
Almost.
No,
Close.
they're
Close.
close, but
Close.
not,
Not there yet.
Imagine Center's Hill is a historic.
No cigars, as long as they're not 75
Absolutely
years old.
insurance way, that's the only thing.
The other thing that you did, cash flow update, was the other thing you did.
Yep, so we haven't submitted any, one might have gone. Yep.
Which just came in. Let me zoom in.
Where are we? Thank you.
So forecast is 269,000, actuals to date are 181,000, so we're below forecast.
At some point, would it be possible to, I know that this is cash flow, but I think for the benefit of this committee and something that I'd like to be able to give to the school committee as well, is almost a budget to actual report. You know, we had that original budget. What have we spent in line items of that budget? I can talk.
Oh, like the
about-
propane?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have it right online, yeah, we
Right,
can print
so,
that out.
you know, what our budget was, what we've spent to date, what we've asked for, and what we've been reimbursed for propane.
We can
Pull that up real
we can
quick.
pull it up right
And
now.
just even through like December, will it be through December 31st?
What's that?
Yeah, it should be
Through
through December
December
31st.
Through the December 31st.
Okay.
Propay hasn't,
Okay.
Yeah, and this doesn't have, literally just got Perkins
Yeah.
invoice today, so that's not in there, but here's your bill to date, here's your amount under contract,
Yeah.
and then this
Okay,
is
can
your,
we get a could I get a copy of that? Because I'd really like
Can
to,
you read it?
I'd like to be able to
I
give an
can
update
read
to
it.
the school committee.
absolutely.
I know what my number is.
Okay, so that was, we can jump back over to, everyone good on that?
Anything else? Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Sorry. And then the only other thing were the PDP cost scenarios updated. I don't know
we started that.
Okay, we
earlier.
started with that.
I think
Okay, got
we
it.
have a next steps.
So next steps.
Kind of the same thing we've been going on. We'll submit on the 15th. If we can get it in earlier, we might. No? All right. Dan, I'm going to start.
3 o'clock on the 15th.
All right, 3 o'clock on the 15th.
What was the drop dead time again?
3 o'clock. They have a 3-week turnaround time for comments. They have taken longer on some past projects. So we'll keep everyone on the committee aware when we get those in. What PMA will do is take the comments and split them up based on who should be replying to them. So PMA, Perkins, and the district. We'll color code them, send them out in a Word document with track changes, and then we can just, and once we get them back, we'll compile them. And we have 2 weeks to reply. We try to get them back as quick as we can. So about a 5-week turnaround time is what we're looking for, but it can be a little longer based on when we get their comments.
As soon as we get their comments back in 3 weeks, hopefully, we can move on into PSR. There's nothing stopping us from continuing the process during that time. When the comments do come in, they're going to be 18 pages or so long. That's their standard template. So it doesn't mean there's 18 pages of comments. They just list everything out and they say yes included or give us more detail. Yeah. Cool.
So, I mean, same submission dates we've been holding. Submit PSR on May 9th. May 8th, sorry. I should look at my computer. MSBA Facilities Assessment Subcommittee on the 29th of May or the 5th of June. Board approval of PSR is what it should say, 6/26. And then include issuance of project scope and project agreement. And then schematic design May through August. And just have a note in there, commencement date based on school planning committee decision to proceed. At the end, how comfortable we feel with the feasibility assessment comments, we could move forward in the schematic at that time. Wouldn't need to wait until the board.
We generally have a good sense from that feasibility assessment subcommittee. I mean, some of them are on the board, and they're the ones that are scrubbing the submission to make sure that they're comfortable and they don't have any questions. And then they prep their recommendation to the board, and very rarely, I can't name any instances where the board has gone against that committee's recommendation. So, depending on which meeting they schedule us for, we should know whether or not we have a level of comfort to move forward by the end of May or early June.
Visual timeline that can be used.
Can you go back a second? I'm sorry, I have a question, sorry. So, the board of approval of the PSR, and under that it says includes issuance of project scope and budget agreement. For some reason I had in my head that the project scope and budget agreement didn't happen until the end of.
You're correct. That bullet belongs below.
Below.
Yeah, under schematic.
Okay.
Yep.
So that one will be below.
So what we'd be looking for there is just a board action letter that says you're authorized to proceed in the schematic design.
Same as the feasibility.
Because after they issue the project scope and budget agreement, which will probably be then in September, I guess, that's when the 120 days clock starts.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's right around Halloween this year. The board meeting.
I don't think we have another building committee meeting scheduled yet.
We don't.
Should we?
I don't know.
Should we put them on based on when we would expect comments or hold off?
They've been so we submitted Rockland's end of October, and we just got comments back last weekend.
They've been taken.
Yeah.
They've been taken.
We don't want to wait for them.
Yeah.
So-
Granted, it was through the holidays, so hopefully it's not.
So-
We should move.
So we had said that our regular scheduled meeting would be the third Wednesday of every month, unless we needed one before that. So I guess my question to you is, are we gonna need one before the third Wednesday of February?
I think that'll be.
That'd be
Oh, it
a
is?
good, that'd be a good, the third Wednesday of February would be good.
Okay, wait a minute. We should have said it's February vacation. So should we go the 13th of February? Does it matter? I mean, I just, in case people are away over February vacation. Everybody will be here, will everybody be
13th,
here
I
over
think.
February?
Yeah, the 13th is what she's proposing.
Yeah, are we talking about the 13th right now or the 20th?
Well, 20th would be typically when we schedule. She's looking to bump up to the
But the 20th is February vacation, but if everybody's going to be here on February vacation, we can go with the 20th. Is everybody gonna be here? What?
There's, I think Perkins is thinking that that might be a little too long to
Kinda
wait.
wanna
We should-
get
So the
dudes
13th?
going.
then
No, I think they were talking January 30th,
Or the 6th.
Oh, really? Okay.
February 6th.
Probably the 6th.
Okay.
So then we can start, I
We
hate to
review
lose
the
all that
comments
time,
at that
it's,
point?
it's a lot.
Will you have comments back by then, you think?
Maybe.
weeks.
We might.
Well, it says,
But it doesn't mean that we.
comments expected, we can't guarantee it.
Expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
We
was
would-
the meeting on the 6th be about?
Yeah,
We would start to refine the plans.
okay.
So
So
it's
that
what-
next
and
one
continue-
now,
continue
Even without
working.
their input?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not gonna
What-
comment too much
Go
on the
ahead.
actual
One question about the comment you made,
schemes,
the
they're gonna have other.
submission, you said the 120 days, that's the town approval, 120
you
days,
have
right?
120
Yep.
days from when you have a
Final
budget
submission,
agreement, a
right.
signed budget and project scope agreement. That's kind of when the
Approval.
clock starts.
Okay.
To obtain funding.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was on the same
So
page.
did we just
So
change
now
this
we've
to-
pushed back to Wednesday, February 6th at 6 o'clock. Does that work for everybody? And at that point, I'll follow up, but just so folks have a sense, we're gonna start looking at in more detail at the, how many, 5 that we have left, I guess? After that, four, sorry.
And
Other questions or comments, or anything else that people,
The traffic study for the site,
yeah,
when do we wanna do that? When do we wanna start that?
I would say almost
I mean,
immediately,
that's,
because,
I think that was what, 50 something?
yeah.
Yeah, we should try to figure out, just pull up that proposal if we can. There was that piece doing the whole site was an additional
yeah.
$58,000 or something
Yep.
like that. It looks to me like now that site's heavily in play,
Yep,
and that we might wanna see if we can get that going now, get the counts done, and maybe have a report by the 6th.
Sure.
Or have something for them to
Sure.
come on the 6th, so that we start to put this into the mix.
and then you also, I'm pretty sure that the survey results were forwarded to the traffic consultant so that they can
Yep.
start to look at those. And, when you talk about full counts, is that kind of when they'll be at?
Be at the corners all over the neighborhood, counting the cars, and,
Perfect.
yeah, doing all that
For,
stuff.
for the whole
For the
site?
whole site.
For the whole site,
campus.
all the things.
Yeah. So I think it seems like it's time to do that.
It is.
We're not knocking any of those off,
Yep,
and now we're gonna move forward, and there's no question in my mind that MSP will eventually ask about it if they don't ask about it now.
well, and Dottie had made a good point previously to say that from a community perspective, if it seems like we're ahead of that, because those,
Yep.
traffic up there is a concern now anyway.
Now's a good time, the winter this is a good time to do it. There's a lot of drivers right now,
Right.
comparatively.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
My question is, when you do the traffic study, do you take into consideration the signage in the area? I mean, the whole area around the school, Center Street and Sheridan and all the,
As part of his,
East West Street?
the results,
Yeah.
we'll take that stuff into account, take those things into account.
Lowering speed, you know,
Traffic calming,
yeah, have
different kinds
school
of.
zone
Yep.
signs.
That's,
more
the
pedestrian
idea was
signs.
to look at the entire campus and look at the
Right.
entire area and how the approach is and how this, if it does become a combined school, how that may either help the whole.
It will.
So
And-
that's what we're trying to.
Well,
at
and
the end
I
of the day,
think,
is make
I want
traffic
to
better
make sure
for
I
the whole.
understand. So the first thing we're doing is just the study. There's
Yes.
no recommendations that happen with this.
There will be recommendations that come out of this.
Okay.
There will, since it's
Okay.
gonna be a full-blown study, and one of the things that happens and why the cost is a lot is because traffic engineers' work is loaded up front like this.
Okay.
So when he does his work, he's kind of done, and the rest of us are in feasibility study, and he's like, well, there's my recommendations, I'm done. So unless you're doing a traffic signal or something, his work on the project is over. So it will be a complete traffic study at the end of that process.
Yeah, we did a mini study.
That's good.
Right now, we've done a little bit just.
We've
to-
done a mini study ourselves,
Yeah.
because they go right by our front door. So I know how many
So you
cars
know
go up
exactly,
and
you're
down
counting
the
them?
street. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I ticked them off.
Got the thing going across the street in front of your house.
Much more cost effective.
About
Yeah.
1,000 cars. I mean, it might be the same car, but about 1,000 cars go up and down
Yep.
Spooner Street every day.
Oh, I believe it.
Well, that's what we want to kind of tease out, is to find out what's really happening on all the streets, and how all the schools are working.
So how rerouting make?
I think his intent is to look at the entire thing, to look at everything and see how we can make it all better,
And
not
so
just.
how far out do they go? I guess my question is, what's the,
Campus, right?
what's
I
the
imagine,
timeframe that
I
they?
don't know exactly how far he's anticipating going on, I can find out, I can ask him to map it and tell us where
Yeah, I'd like to-
the people
I'd like
will
to know
be
that.
located, but I think that they're gonna be out at least on every entrance street, out 2 blocks.
Right.
And probably all the way around the back too, they're gonna hit every single entrance and
All
exit.
the way in the back of the high school?
Oh, yeah,
at
because he's
corner
doing
of
the whole campus.
Okay.
So he's gonna hit every single spot.
That was the secondary street option that we were talking about.
But they're gonna count everywhere.
What type of recommendation could we expect from a traffic study?
I think
How
he's,
detailed?
I'm gonna ask him to break it into 2 pieces. I want him to give us the recommendations for the school that we're anticipating building, and then recommendations for the whole campus, because they're gonna be 2 different things. Like, when we start to actually go into the next schematics, we have to price a project, and we wanna be able to easily separate what's gonna be part of the project versus what may be a future thing, even if at some point you say, well, I wanna do it all.
Right.
We just need to understand what is actually, it needs to be done as part of the school, plus, like, without looking at all the other things that might happen here.
That is it going to be, like, we've shown routes on here, on some of the options.
Yeah, we're only, you notice we're only showing them really how they enter.
Right,
into
is
this
that
school.
the type of recommendation we will get? Like, he's gonna recommend a traffic flow, including where would you locate the approach roads and drop off and things like that?
I think that's
And
what
then-
you could expect for all the schools.
Right, so the whole campus might, in terms of how traffic flows through that entire campus, could be entirely reconfigured as a result of this.
Possibly.
I hope so.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Because he started to look at it, and if you went back to the
It would
interview
be-
slides,
It would be really
you'd see he
organized.
already started to kind of zoom out and look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the interview slides do have him looking at all of it, and that's what we knew we would eventually probably want to do, is look at all of it.
Big day.
Great. Other questions or things that people want to consider this evening? Anything else
There's a
from you guys?
question from the
Oh,
public.
sorry.
I have a question. At what point do they start talking about the things like the water, groundwater and surface water? We're going to have a much larger area that's not grassed, so there's no drainage. We're going to have more effluent from the school itself going into the system and eventually into the ground. The effect on the water table, the groundwater, and how we're going to manage the drainage system around the campus to avoid flooded basements downstream. I think that it might be a question that a lot of people are going to start asking when they realize the size and scope of the school.
Right, that's gonna be, most of that will be schematic design, where we really start to design the actual surface improvements and the drainage and all the other structures that'll be out there to handle that.
And who pays for that?
That's part of the
That's
schematic
part of
design.
it, okay.
Yeah.
But basically, the phase we're about to walk into is to take these 4 options, and by the end of the process, get down to 1. Schematic design would be then taking that 1
Beyond that, next phase.
and going into the detail.
Right, okay. And is that when it goes in front of the townspeople?
After
So that they can see some of what the design was,
So
was going to be,
after the design,
after the design?
right. So,
Schematic design.
right, after the schematic
Yeah,
design. So the design that the townspeople will see will be what this planning team has selected as the final design to move forward to the town for approval.
Right.
So the
And then-
town won't see, I just want to be clear, that the town isn't picking which up, right?
I will say that in the next phase, it'll be primarily newer information in more detail of site plans and floor plans, but we'll also start to look at the massing of the building and shadows and a bunch of things. We won't actually be designing the look of the building, but we'll get into kind of its
Impact.
bulk, its shape. And,
There were looking at the traffic issue again, if there were traffic improvements off-site, like in some intersections or streets that were not part of the campus, would that be eligible for funding or not?
Then we would pay for anything on the site.
No,
Okay.
offsite, no. And they're gonna,
Off-site meaning off the school site or off the campus site?
I think they're gonna probably try to draw a line around, if we choose to go on this site, I imagine they will try to figure out a line around
A boundary.
the boundary, which I
Around
would
the school.
imagine will be the property boundary, that with the property cards that we've given them and the data that we've handed them so far. And anything off that
Right.
line will be non-reimbursable.
So ultimately, the site cost cap is gonna get us before we even get that, we're gonna be 8%, and we're gonna hit that cap, and this is gonna be above and beyond that cap anyway, so you're kind of double excluded, so even if they did technically pay for it, you'd still be excluded that way. Where it gets a little bit more tricky is, if there's substantial design engineering costs, they may actually call those costs ineligible for reimbursement. So that's something we need to keep our eye on.
Yeah.
I think where it's related to the project, they're gonna consider it a cost that's incidental to the project. So it can happen on the ballot vote as part of the project, most likely. But I would say the MSB is probably going to separate themselves from funding any portion of it.
Is that, I mean, I'm assuming that there must be, you probably have experience in other communities that are in a similar situation where you're combining things on a campus and you have to look at traffic, you just can't avoid it.
Yeah, it's frequent.
Any other questions before I?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, sorry.
I've talked to a number of the neighbors that will be abutting this
Yep.
project. And I said, you know, is nobody from the neighborhood even here? They said, oh no, they've got, this is, I heard it from 2 or 3 or 4, that the town has some ordinance or something they pass saying, if you're involved with a major project, I don't know if they defined it, but 100 million should be, that you would be notified by registered mail what's going on. Is there such a thing, or am I just out there?
As
And I've been told by police officers and
As like
town
in my life.
employees that there is something that.
I mean, we haven't done anything.
If there's any variance involved, then that's.
No, I mean, just to say what's happening, you know, to wake up and say, hey, we got $100 million project next door.
Yep.
No, then it's gonna be, what?
I've never seen.
We're not aware of the
Have you
requirement.
ever seen anything
There
like
isn't-
that?
That's not a requirement.
No, and so there are various provisions in state law typically that lay out when notice to abutters for specific projects, whether by the town or by a private developer, are required. It's, I don't know of any that are triggered by dollar amount of a project. The notice and participation of the public on the financial piece would be, I believe, twofold, and correct me if I'm wrong. One would be at town meeting, which any registered voter in town is able to participate. The funding related to it would be a clearly stated, detailed warrant article, which would be on the town meeting warrant that gets posted in numerous locations throughout town and online. And his annual town meeting is, for instance, the third Monday every May. That's one opportunity for the public to weigh in on the financial matter. The second would be that if this went to a debt exclusion override, that would be an election, which would have to be called by the selectmen at a public meeting with an agenda posted, and would then be widely broadcast throughout the press and various outlets like that. But we don't have any sort of system or administrative capability, speaking as a town administrator, to send a certified letter to every single parcel in town.
But one of the things that we've talked about, you know, we had a fair amount of good community participation in the, you know, fall time period. I think as we get into the spring, some advice that would be helpful from you is when do we go back out to the community to start to get their feedback on this? So, for example, if it looks like we are narrowing, close to narrowing down to a Parkview site, I would certainly want to do a forum, an open public forum where we could invite people in to say this is where this project stands right now.
Yeah.
And I would imagine at a forum like that, we'd have Parkview, you know, people in those neighborhoods who would perhaps want to attend.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did into Dennis Yarmouth. Once it was clear what the direction was going to be, a specific notice went out to residents within a certain.
I think a phone call, actually.
It was probably.
I believe
Just
it was
use that as a
a
mechanism to
call
make sure that everybody who's abutting got it. right, of a certain radius,
Yep.
was notified to come to that meeting, or they were invited to that meeting.
It was not a by law thing, it was their decision to do that.
Does that answer your question? Right.
Yes,
But there
there
are
is
ways
no
to-
rule.
But there, we do often try and get that out as much as we
Yep.
can if we're not required.
If they're concerned, we'd rather know about them before.
Well, as my neighbors ask me, I'd rather be able to like to say, no, there is
You
no
go to the meeting.
regulation on that.
Right.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to motivate people to be involved now.
I think it'd be important,
Yeah.
rather than at the end.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Better get involved now.
Yeah.
We got 4 months during schematic design
Yeah.
to incorporate
Yeah.
Meetings at
public
that point.
meetings or comments.
Okay, so we know when our next meeting is. We voted everything we need to vote tonight. And I have,
Just one question for
one
you.
question, sorry.
On the traffic study, how are we gonna push that forward?
And so you're gonna need, you're talking about the money at this
Yes.
point. Yeah. Remember, it was not
It's not
included, it was,
included.
we may need to do the addition. So we need
It's
to
not
talk about that.
It was noted in their contract.
It was in the contract.
Oh, so should we
There
just vote
was
to
traffic, and there was
allocate?
something else that could cost geotechnical.
Yeah, it was the
geotechnical.
geo portion
There
of
were
it as
two
well.
portions,
Yep.
traffic and geotechnical, that weren't included in the scope of what we approved for contracts, because we didn't know where this was
Can
going.
you just remind me of the bottom line of the contract number?
950 something?
We haven't seen it.
But we thought that the traffic was gonna be possibly, it was either 50 or 75 more, I can't
It
remember.
was
which.
50.
50?
That's to me, is
Isn't it around
in
1,000?
that range.
Yeah, I know,
Overruns?
exactly. Well, and if I recall, when we had done the original budget, I think, which is what you were just saying, it looked like we were going to be under anyway. We thought there might be some excess, if I recall.
You're sure it's not in your price?
That's
No,
one,
no.
and then section 2.
No, it's this traffic study, it's 50.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but what was the price? So, the entire project budget was $1 million. Is that what you're trying to back off of, how much it we committed of that $1 million? Right.
I think 552 was Perkins and two
86.
Chris,
wasn't it?
Chris actually, I remember at one of the early meetings when he, that's why I asked, budget to actual, that's
So that's
kind of
the-
why I want to
So
know.
that's a good one.
That's the committed amount right now.
So,
We have wiggle room.
that's on
Oh, yeah.
October, right.
Yeah, so we,
We're on a
this
budget,
body
let's spend it.
allocate.
So are you looking for
Money's
a vote
in.
in, or are you looking?
Well,
So
no,
it's
I
just a
don't,
matter of-
do we need to vote this tonight? I
Up to
don't
you.
have it on the agenda, we
Okay,
can't
so,
vote.
yeah, you couldn't, I don't think you have the authority to anyway. We can take, we should connect on that, but I think because it's, the dollar amount, it would need to be executed by the selectmen as a separate contract, which is doable.
From
We
the
have-
money.
But it
We
should
have,
be,
but it's from the existing allocation.
it should be from the existing allocation, right?
We have a $1 million allocation
Right.
from town meeting.
Right.
I'm fairly positive, without looking at it, this would fit within that, but I
Right.
would just like to look at it, and if it is 58,000, or actually anything over 25,000, the selectmen need to just vote to award it. The next
Okay.
meeting's the 28th of,
So we do not approve
We-
it, that, any of that.
Okay, so we're good.
And this,
As
to be
long
so
as
we
it-
put an amendment through Perkins contract, it wouldn't be a
Right.
contract direct with the traffic.
I need to look at it more closely with you.
Okay.
It is
When we have some
Because
information.
I believe Dottie or you signed the Perkins contract and the.
That's right, it's under the charter, anything over
Yeah.
25,000, the selectmen need to vote on.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, would it not be feasible to take a vote on that, just to be sure? Authorize them to go ahead?
I technically, if it's not on the
It's not
agenda.
on the agenda.
I
It's on the
can't.
agenda.
So
We can do
it
it.
can't.
And the second highlight there is phase 1 was clean, so we're clear on that one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, tonight, anything else before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Let's look at. Anything else? Good. So can I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Before everyone goes, I never pass this along, it's a signing sheet, sorry. Stuck under a bunch of papers.